What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one I'm going to be talking about the one and only Tesla stock and what you should be looking out for the future. I'm also going to do some in-depth technical analysis and break down what you should be watching for in the charts, and also why on earth tomorrow is going to be a very important day for the markets. I'm also going to briefly talk about what the news is saying about Tesla, what the technicals are telling us, what the data is telling us, and also what you should watch for tomorrow as I give you guys my predictions. Now, before I break anything down, before I get into any more details, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner. Take none of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Tesla community as a whole. And the last things, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you're guaranteed up to 12 free stocks, each worth up to $2,000. And the best part is, any could be a free Tesla share. It's a limited time offer that has been extended again. The offer ends in just 11 days. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. Tesla's currently down about 2.8% at the time I'm recording this, just 4 minutes before the market closes. And so far, the market is doing okay. I'm going to explain exactly why it's still doing okay. It's not doing horribly, and why there is a lot of potential for us to get a potential bounce tomorrow. But in order for that to happen, it's going to depend on very important data. So tomorrow is going to be a big day because right before the market opens, an hour before the market opens, we have non-farm payrolls coming out. That's very important. And also we have the unemployment rate coming out. Now, you have to remember that bad news is good news and good news is bad news, meaning that tomorrow, when the unemployment data comes out, we want, as investors, and I know this is unfortunate, but we want there to be more pain in the jobs market. We want to see unemployment go up for the month of December because it's going to show signs of a weakening in the economy. And we want this because this will in turn help bring down inflation. And when that happens, it's going to decrease the odds of the Fed being even more hawkish, right? So that's what the market essentially wants. We want unemployment to be higher than expected or as expected. If unemployment is lower than expected, the market could crash. And that's why it's going to be very important. Let me actually break down the circumstances. Before I do that, though, we have to talk about the news. There wasn't really a whole lot that came out. We actually saw Cathie Wood say some important things about Tesla. She just said that Tesla's stock still has miles to run. She's still very bullish on Tesla. And you have to remember the fact that a lot of these, fund managers, they could sell stocks and buy stocks. Just because they do it, it does not mean that they are losing faith or gaining faith in a company. They could believe in a company for the entire time, but there could be instances where they sell some shares or they buy some shares just based off what they expect to happen, based off certain occurrences, and based off their risk assessments. So in that case, as of right now, Cathie Wood has been buying more Tesla stock. Does that mean Tesla is just going to explode instantly? I mean, it doesn't necessarily guarantee it, but there is some potential for that to happen. And tomorrow is going to be very telling about this. So just because she's buying, do not think that Tesla will just instantly explode. But at the same time, even if it happens, like I mentioned in my previous videos, there is going to likely be a crash relatively soon over the next couple of weeks. Okay, so I'm going to break down a more short-term analysis in a few minutes and also some other important things. We also saw, all of these articles coming out saying that, oh, Neo is breaking records and the new model beats Tesla and this and that. Well, you always have to remember, and I want to remind everyone, that what you see on the news is not always equivalent to the truth. A lot of these news articles, some of them could be in Tesla's favor, some of them could be literally against Tesla. All of these news articles, or the large majority of them, are notorious for being biased. Always remember that, okay? It's always important to look in many sources on different sides of a political system or spectrum, and it's very important that you remember this when you are looking at data. Now, I also want to break down this right here. Elon Musk had this poll on his Twitter page, and he asked, Elon Musk should stay out of politics or keep shooting his feet. And I found this very comical, and the majority of people out there actually voted for him to keep doing what he's doing, which in my opinion is actually okay in some ways. It's okay for him to make some claims and expose things, I guess, if you want to go that route. But my only view of him is, my only advice for him is to just be very careful with your words, okay? Having freedom of speech is great and all. I respect that right. But I also believe that as the CEO of the company, you should be very careful with who you offend and if you cause division or not, and be very careful with what claims you make, whether they're contentious or not, because making a very small claim could always be misinterpreted, or it could also be subjected to controversy, right? So always be very careful with your words. If I saw Elon Musk and I had to give him advice, I would say that. But I'd also tell Elon Musk that I appreciate him because the work he's doing is incredible. I also want to note that there has been a lot of talk about Twitter looking for a new CEO, Elon Musk looking for a new Twitter CEO. I believe that one day it's going to happen. He's going to find someone, and when that's announced, that could also be a huge catalyst for Tesla. Tesla stock could make a big move to the upside. It should happen over the next few months. It should happen relatively soon. There's no confirmation of it just yet, though, so be on the lookout. Now, finally, let's transition into the data and the technicals. What are we seeing? Tesla is a relatively high PE ratio stock. I'm very proud of what the company has achieved. And looking at the price pairs ratio percentage right now, we're actually seeing this very close to its bottom from before. So could this thing get a bounce to start outperforming? It is possible, but so far it's not showing as much strength as what we wanted. Tesla is still relatively weak, and what happens tomorrow is going to affect that even more. As far as analysts go, Goldman Sachs is still giving Tesla a buy rating. So there are still institutions out there that are very bullish on Tesla. They're going to be buying these dips. So there's nothing to worry about, in my opinion, on the fundamental side. I think very big improvements are yet to come. Now, from a historical basis, Tesla's green only 48% of the time on Fridays. So keep that in mind. We tend to be red on these Fridays, but things could change depending on the data. So just a reminder, tomorrow before the market opens, we have unemployment data. We also have, I believe, some Fed speakers later on during the day. The Fed cooks and also Barkett and others are going to be speaking. That's going to be very important, but the data before the market opens is going to be the most important thing. What is likely to happen from a technical standpoint? The market just closed, and we closed in a pretty decent place. So I want to note that on the 1 hour time frame on SPY, and also remember, SPY does affect Tesla. The way Tesla moves is affected by the overall market. I cannot stress that enough. When the market was green and pushing up for some time, Tesla was also pushing up. Today, the market came down after we actually saw a little bit more strength from the job sector. After that happened, what happened? Tesla was also red today, right? So it really is affected by the market. So what's going on right now? I mentioned to everyone that we have this channel, we have a potential bear flag being respected. I drew out this line and I never touched it. I never touched it since yesterday. And so far today, we almost perfectly actually respected this line, except for the very end of the day, we dropped a little below it before bouncing right back up. And we're still in the channel, so it's completely fine. Sometimes you get those like little drops below it, like just like right here, we came a tiny bit below it, completely fine though. And we're still basically in this trend. Now, I want to note that we do have a potential, a possible inverse head and shoulders like formation right here with the left shoulder, the right shoulder forming, and then the head right here. That's just a possibility. I also want to note that the market is slowly making those higher lows. Remember, 374 was the bottom, then 376, then 378. Today, our bottom was the high 378. So the market is slowly on this uptrend. It's still respecting that. We also have a bullish divergence on the MACD or MACD, whatever you want to call it. So there are a lot of technical indicators suggesting the market is going to remain more bullish, and we are going to get a counter trend rally to the upside temporarily. I also want to note that when we touch this trend line down here, we tend to see the market bounce like the next day. We tend to see that happen from a technical standpoint. So technically, this is telling us that the market might get a bounce tomorrow. It might start pushing up. All right. And from a technical standpoint, we're probably going to see, Apple get a bit of a bounce off this key zone right here, this 24 to 25 zone. But I also want to note, I can't promise that because it's going to depend on this data. I'm going to show you guys exactly something else that's important. On SPY, if the data comes out bad, meaning that the jobs numbers are still strong, the unemployment rate is still relatively low or lower than expected, this is going to likely start crashing. It's not going to be pretty, guys. We're going to go for this gap fill. We're going to see 376. It is not going to be good. And if that's the case, Tesla is also going to come down. I would expect Tesla to come down to 108 and maybe even 104. It's not going to be pretty. But if the data comes out and the data is better than expected, meaning unemployment is as expected or higher than expected, showing more pain in the job sector, this thing could actually start to rally to the upside and push up a bit. And if that happens, Tesla could likely push up with the market. Tesla could start to fill this gap. It most definitely will if the market does pump. Assuming there's no other bad news about Tesla, this thing could fill the gap up here to 113 and continue pushing up. Maybe get to like 117, make a big move to the upside. It could happen, all right? It could really happen if the data comes out as expected. So we have to see how the data comes out. That's why it's going to be a big day. And it's such a big day because we're barely at support on this channel on SPY. All right. So are we going to continue to respect this trend, or are we going to start breaking down from this point on? That's why tomorrow is a big day, because the whole trend could actually shift. It's going to be very important. On the QQQ, I will talk a little bit more about Tesla. Just let me quickly go over these. QQQ looks like it's coming down a bit. Could this thing bounce a little bit? It looks like it has this gap that could get filled first before bouncing. We'll have to wait and see. It could even just bounce tomorrow first. We have another gap up here. Yeah, we have another gap up here. It could actually go for the gap fill first. So there are two gaps, one a little bit below and one a little bit above. Could go either way depending on the data. So we'll just have to wait and see on that. On the dollar index, this thing is starting to bounce just a little bit, but things could change depending on what happens tomorrow. If it does want to come back down here and retest the previous resistance, that's very possible. On the VIX, I wanted to note something that's important. On the VIX, we basically we gapped up pretty hard. Then we started to come down to fill the gap that formed, but we didn't actually fully fill it. So if the VIX does continue to come down, fill this gap and then fill the second gap, there's even a third gap down here. So we have like 3 unfilled gaps. The most important one is going to be that 21.5 zone, which is where the VIX is. If we see the VIX come down more, that could be bullish for the markets if we continue to fill these gaps, right? That still is very possible. 10-year yield, it did kind of push up a little bit, but it has been on a bit of a downtrend as the market is showing some strength. It could come down a little lower, but once again, it depends on the data. So what does this all mean for Tesla? As I mentioned earlier, it really depends on data. It depends on how the market moves. If the data is what the market wants, okay, Tesla could go for this gap fill 113, and then if we break 113, I'm going to be watching this 116 to 117 zone. Then we have this gap right here. I mean, could we fill that tomorrow? I don't really see that happening tomorrow, but what is possible is if there is a big move to the upside in the markets, if we shoot to the upside, we're going to be testing this gap resistance. That could happen to Tesla if the data comes out the way we want it. But if SPY collapses and SPY fails and we break below this channel and the market starts coming down, if that's the case, it's going to be correlated with Apple also breaking down. How low will Apple go? It could go to new lows. It's not going to be a good sign for the markets. That's going to drag SPY down. It's going to drag the collective market down. It's going to shift sentiment in a different direction, leading to more selling and less buying, which in turn is going to affect Tesla. So if that happens, if the data is bad, okay, Tesla could come down. We're going to retest 108. And it's very unlikely, if it's really bad, we're not going to hold it. I'd be watching for a move to potentially slowly come down to 104 if that ends up happening. Please remember, we have a gap between 103 to 104. That could get filled in the future. It does not have to get filled immediately. And then we also have a 100 level. So very important level. If we break below 100, there's going to be extreme capitulation and the market is going to take a bit of a hit. Now, anyways, I want to actually mention something from a technical standpoint. Okay, I'm just talking about the hypotheticals. From a technical standpoint, it's a little bit more likely the market gets a bounce and Tesla will push up to fill this gap and continue pushing. It's a little bit more likely because, like I mentioned, we had bullish divergence. We have this trend that's still being respected. And when we touch this trend line, we do tend to bounce. All right, technicals are not perfect. They don't always predict what data is going to tell us. But from a technical standpoint, it is a little bit more likely this data does help us pump, but we have to wait and see first before making any claims. I hope that's as clear as possible. So we'll see what the data tells us. It's going to be a big day for the markets. I'm hoping we stay in this trend. I'm hoping we get a bit of a bounce, and that would help Tesla bounce. That's what I'm hoping for. I just don't really know what the data says, so I can't make a perfect prediction. But if it happens, don't forget to watch that 113 zone. Break above that, then 117 could come on Tesla. Anyways, thank you all so much for listening. Please have a great rest of the day. Even though the volume is not that great in the markets, things could shift in one day depending on data. So remain calm, cool, and collected. Do what you have to do, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Tesla to the moon, because the long-term future is still incredibly bright. No matter what anyone tries to say, I'm still very bullish long-term on Tesla. And peace out.